Hi guys, Sean Oliver, Kayfabe Commentaries here. Continuing our Out of the Vault series, giving you access to shows that are in the Kayfabe Commentaries Vault, which is our subscription service. You can see hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours of programming like these shows. The top of the line in shoot interviews, and if you were a fan of ours from way back, we call you the Commandos. You called yourself the Commandos. We just kind of jumped in. Then you know that a very popular guest booker edition was with Jim Cornette first, where he covered the Invasion, and then shortly thereafter, we brought in Mr. Vince Russo to cover the same topic. Now, those of you steeped in the more steamy side of wrestling, the shoot business, you know the heat that Cornette has for Russo. I'm not sure Russo has that much heat with Corny. He certainly doesn't appreciate a lot of what went down, but I think the issue is mostly Cornette. So famously, Jim and Vince had this issue. Now, Corny's Invasion rebooking in his edition of Guest Booker, I believe it was Guest Booker 9. It was such a popular release. It was our first, I think I can safely say, it was our first like smash hit, like thousands and thousands and thousands of DVDs sold. It was so popular that when we had the opportunity to bring Russo in, we naturally said, let's give him the same thing that Corny had. Have them both book it, and fans can buy both and watch them both, have a little watch party, and let us know which was best. I want to say we had a vote. There were a few times on our Kayfabe Commentaries website that we had votes. We always had votes for the Wrestling's Most series. So that countdown is legit. You guys picked all of those top five in all of the Wrestling's Most. The other thing I believe was voting for Corny's Invasion or Russo's Invasion. I don't recall the results. I know another thing we put up was when we had the Great Debate 08. We had the presidential style debate with Harley Race and Bruno Sammartino, and you guys voted, and Bruno did win it. And yes, I did put the headline up on the website. Bruno wins by a nose. I struggled with it ethically for a while, but then decided kind of who we are. So Bruno did win that vote very, very narrowly though. So Russo comes in, he books the Invasion. Both DVDs are released. You can get your subscription to the KC Vault and get all of our material, and vote for yourself, or nowhere to vote. Just make up your own mind. You can tweet it. Whose Invasion booking you like best? So take a look at guest booker Vince Russo.
Well, the show is, of course, guest booker, and sitting beside me is a booker. I mean a writer. I mean a booker. Am I right? Writer.
Yeah.
What's the difference?
There's a big difference. Bookers book wrestling matches. Writers write television shows. Simple.
So it's a more entertainment-minded, maybe more visual, should I say? Maybe if it's not entertainment-minded, visual?
Episodic.
Okay.
More week-to-week, episodic, cliffhanger, bring the viewer to the following week, and not have the emphasis on what's the best match, but more of an emphasis on what's the best show.
Gotcha. And maybe performers are better on television than they are in the ring.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there are some performers that are better in the ring, but by far there are some performers who are better on the mic and better telling stories.
When you were a kid watching wrestling, when were you aware that somebody was responsible for pulling the strings and making you feel the way you were feeling, angry or excited?
Gosh, I really think, the first time I saw it, and, I've told the story so many times, and I remember flipping through the channels, and it was, UHF at the time, and seeing Captain Lou and the Valiants. And I just remember stopping, being mesmerized, and just being so entertained. And like knowing at that age, these guys aren't for real. I mean, there's nobody in the world that could have these type of personalities. And I mean, especially Lou Albano. I mean, come on. I can't say enough about that guy, but like I said, I was probably 10 or 11, and I instantly and immediately got it. And then, once those guys hooked me, I mean, then to see, rest his soul, Chief Jay Strongbow. I mean, getting his butt kicked 25 minutes in a match, and then out of nowhere, here comes the war dance. I mean, it's like I sit here now, 40 years later, and it's like, I'm sorry, but it doesn't get any better than that. And then, it was, I mean, I say it all the time. I mean, the big cat, Ernie Ladd, Mr. Television Announcer. I've been a movie buff my whole life. I mean, love movies, seen a million movies. But when you talk about guys like, the Big Cat, when you talk about a Captain Lou, when you talk about a Freddie Blassie, when you talk about the Valiants, when you talk about these guys, you're talking about some of the best actors in the world.
Right. I was going to say.
And it's funny, and I don't mean to interrupt you, but this is getting off point a little bit, but I just want to tell you the story. I was flipping through the channels with my wife the other night, looking for something on TV. And I'm sure you go through this every night, there's 200 channels and you can't find anything, okay? All of a sudden we're flipping. Thank God on TV land, we come across All in the Family. And there's Archie. And I said to my wife, and I think I went back to look at the date of the episode. I think it was 1972. And I said to my wife, right now in 2012, right now, this is the best thing on television. And the reason why it was the best thing on television, and if you go back to that era, everything was character driven. Yeah. It was the character. The best shows in the history of television was because of the characters. That's what it's always been about. That's what it always will be about. And something really lacking in the wrestling business today. But that's where a writer comes in and not necessarily a booker.
And today, let me ask you, is it because we have a lack of compelling characters on wrestling television, perhaps, a little bit the responsibility of the writer, but maybe the performer. You mentioned All in the Family, Carol O'Connor. I often say to people when we're talking about television, there are a handful of characters that are so iconic, you cannot imagine it ever having worked with any other actor, ever. Mm-hmm. And I think that's one of them, Louis De Palma, Taxi, another one. Is it possible that the performers in wrestling today don't bring enough originality, ingenuity, whatever, creativeness to the table to help complement the writers? The writers always get the blame, but is it half the performer's fault?
I'll tell you exactly what it is. And we were just having the conversation this morning, and I think I've been around it long enough to kind of form an opinion and really take a step back and look everything, okay? The generation of wrestlers you have now, okay, they grew up in the video game era. And they sat there and they played video games, wrestling video games, okay? They did not sit there and watch Lou Albano and the Grand Wizard of Wrestling and Superstar Billy Graham. They didn't see any of that. They grew up in an era where they played video games. And when they're playing video games, they're imagining that they're these wrestlers doing all these moves. Well, that's the mentality and the psychology and the philosophy that they brought into the business, that it's the match and the moves. And I can't tell you how many times when you know, especially at TNA, because I work with a lot of younger guys, they spend so much time going over the match and memorizing the match move by move. And you'll appreciate this, that when they're in the ring, okay, all they're thinking about is that what's the next move. They're taking their character and throwing it right out the window. They're not even thinking, how would my character react right now in this match if this... Do you think Bruno Sammartino was worrying about his next move, or the Wild Samoans were worrying about their next move? You know, it's funny. It's like, I take somebody, and I talk about this all the time. I think one of the people that I helped get over the most, believe it or not, in TNA was a female by the name of Madison Rayne. And the reason being is when Madison went out there and worked, she stayed in character the entire match. And by staying in character, the emotional bond was built between her and the audience, and people started to hate her. But it's if you're in there and you're going move for move for move, and the emphasis is on the match, you're taking that emotional connection away from the fan. And if you're not a wrestling fan of what happens between those ropes, you lost me.
Right. Let me take you back to childhood again and some of these characters we're talking about. What's a compelling angle that had you hooked? Now, the characters were the first thing that attracted you. But can you think of an angle that got you emotionally invested, where you wanted to hop the guardrail and take a swing?
I can think of angles. I mean, you know, the first one that comes to mind, and I'm not sure how old are you, Sean?
I'm 40.
Okay, so you're 10 years younger than me. You might not even remember this. But I remember, you know, Chief Jay Strongbow had a tag team partner at the time, Spiros Arion.
Yep.
You remember that? Sure. And I mean, I remember it like it was yesterday. I remember the match where Arion turned on Chief. And I remember he had Chief in the corner, and he took Chief's headdress and pulled out the feathers and shoved them down Chief's throat. And I remember sitting there, again, and this is the beauty of it, knowing it was 1,000,000% fake. I remember sitting there, oh my God, you know. Then you know, even as I got older, I remember the instances. I remember when Jake the Snake Roberts first came on the scene. And if you remember, when Jake first came on the scene, Steamboat was really hot and a fan favorite, and everybody loved him. I think it was like the first time we saw Jake, he destroyed Ricky Steamboat. And I mean, it was things like that it was like, oh my God. And who could ever forget, you know, Jake putting the snake on Savage, and that snake biting into Savage. But, you know, these were the moments. And you know, it's funny. It's like, without even realizing it, we're sitting here, we're talking about characters. Arion took Chief's headset. Jake took his snake. You know,
props.
DiBiase making the kid dribble the basketball.
Kicking it out.
It was all character, gimmick. And those are the unforgettable moments. There are probably maybe 3 matches that I'll never forget. But the moments in wrestling, Andre pulling the chain off of Hulk, those moments in wrestling, those are what made it.
Why were you so emotionally invested in what had happened to Chief Jay Strongbow? And nobody, and it's not a knock, nobody today will be as emotionally invested in anything that happens Monday night as you were with the Chief. Why?
Well, I think a big reason of that is, let's face it, you know, it's little of that has to do with the wrestling business. A lot of that has to do with society. Because let's face it, when we were kids, when I was a kid, when you were a kid, you know, we were watching Superstars, okay? 11 o'clock Saturday night, you know, whatever it was, okay? The entire show was squash matches. until you got to that one angle. And that one, you're sitting through the drama matches. You know who's going to win. You know, Superstar is going to have his finishing move, and you know everything that's going to happen. Then you get to the one match where there's the angle. So now all the emphasis is put on that one match. Okay, and think about it. There is no way you or I can sit here and even begin to think, what was the competition on the other channels at the time? Because it was 11 o'clock or 11 o'clock Saturday morning, or whatever. But the second the move was made to prime time, okay, now you're competing against Friends, Seinfeld, Monday Night Football, Lost, your ER. I mean. Grey's Anatomy, the list goes on, and now you're competing with big hitters. So now everything you do on that show has to be big so you don't lose your audience. And when you do everything big over 52 years, you've seen everything, and it's very, very, very difficult to make something stand out anymore. And I don't think that's the fault of the wrestling business. I think that's society.
We're talking about the wrestling fan as a kid. When did that kid in you get to book their first angle professionally?
Professionally?
Yeah, well, your actual first contribution to a booking meeting
I'd
session.
say probably it wasn't so much an angle. People don't understand, and I'm very grateful for it now, but I started at the WWF magazine as a freelance writer. Okay, I went from a freelance writer to editor of the magazine. Okay, I went from editor of the magazine to scripting every single promo for every single wrestler when they were promoting the house shows, when we're coming to Greensboro and blah, 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 blah. I wrote all those.
What year would that be?
94. I mean, hundreds for every guy. Everyone was different, okay? And then basically from there, the next step was Vince, said, okay, Vince, I've got this character. This is my idea for the character, Goldust. And he gave me that character, he gave me his vision, he gave me his idea, and then I started scripting everything for that character, which was such a great exercise for me, and maybe that's why my career kind of took the road that it did, because it was so character orientated.
And very filmic, too. You said you were a movie fan, so you letterboxed the entrances and all.
Yeah. But the whole thing was, see, my philosophy of booking has always been, like, when I'm sitting down and writing the show, I've got to put myself in the shoes of every single wrestler on the show. What would Steve Austin do if this happened to him? How would The Rock react if this happened to him? And it's different for every single wrestler. And, again, that's really where the concentration of the character gets in. And I think we've gone way away from that.
Mm-hmm. Here's a good TV writer sitting across from us. What are his qualities?
No boundaries. There are no boundaries. Just having the freedom to go where nobody has ever gone before, and daring to be different, and daring to show your audience something that they've never seen before.
Now, a good boss for whom he works will do what in relation to a good TV writer who doesn't have boundaries? What does the boss need to do?
Lets him run. Just lets the writer run, and if that writer was the chosen one by him, then have the faith in that writer to take that hand off and run with it, and just let him run. You can't put constraints and handcuffs on a good writer, because that good writer will no longer be any good.
What kind of editorial strengths is he allowed, the owner?
Tell me what you want. Tell me what you want, and I will get us there. Tell me what you want. What do you want the end result to be? Who is the person that you want to promote? Who is the person that you want to get over? You know, tell me what you want. Give me the big picture, and let me take the week-to-week details of getting you there.
So they may say, you know, he should probably get a belt.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then it's up to you to get me there.
Yeah, Vince, we're going with Shawn Michaels for the next 6 months. No problem.
Okay.
Just tell me what you want. What's big picture vision for that character, and leave it up to me to get there on a week by week basis.
What would the definition of a dysfunctional relationship between a writer and a boss be? Too much interference from the top.
Micromanaging. You know, having your head over the writer's shoulder every single show. Why are you doing this? Why are you doing that? Why aren't you doing this? Why aren't you doing that? And believe it or not, a lot of that comes from inexperienced bosses that really don't have an opinion and are letting their opinion be formed from the internet. So they're basically reading what they're saying on the internet, and now they're coming to you and they're almost using that as their opinion. And the internet is not the wrestling audience.
Good point here. What do you use as a focus group then? Like, how do you gauge? You got to have an ear to the people. Where do you find it?
Man, I tell you, one of the things that I loved doing, and I really wasn't able to do it at WCW, was able to do without a doubt at the WWE, able to do it later on in TNA. My best tool would be to literally go out in the people.
To the audience.
Absolutely. And that's, I did that every single week, you know, WWE through the Attitude Era. When I knew it was a segment or a match or an in-ring that was vital to the show and vital to the direction of the company, I would go out in the crowd and listen. And there is nothing more valuable than that.
Has there been a wrestler who's been over under your direction and writing that you think would have been over whether you were working their angle or not? So talented that if we were 20 years ago and they had to say whatever came to their mind when the camera went on and talk people into the building, that they could do it.
Absolutely, yeah. Yes, I mean, numerous ones. I mean, just, you know, ones that come to mind immediately, and I don't want to leave anybody out, but I'd say the three that come to mind immediately would, well, see, there's more than three already,
well,
but
just
the first three I think of are Austin, Rock, and Shawn Michaels. You know, but then as I sit here, I mean, yeah, Mick Foley, yeah, Bret Hart could do that. I mean, there...
Was Bret Hart a good talker?
I thought so, yeah. I thought so because he wasn't polished. You know, he wasn't polished, which made it kind of real. And I enjoyed Bret talking. I mean, Taker. I mean, you know, come on. Yeah, these guys didn't need... I'm not the one going out there cutting the promo. I mean, you know, just...
So why do we write for those guys today?
Because they have to have material. And especially when you're writing a show 52 weeks out of the year, somebody's got to give you that material. And that really is the job of the writer.
Mm-hmm. So it's fair to say, those of us that aren't in a locker room, Ric Flair, Hogan, people who are great talkers and were great talkers in that other era, their words are still being written for them.
No, not at all. There is, you know, it's so funny. And I'm not going to mention names, but I literally spoke to a TNA talent this week who I literally wrote every single word for. And now since I've departed, you know, basically the talent told me like that the writers are now giving them 3 bullet points and telling them to go cut a promo for 12 minutes, and they're absolutely lost. Okay, when you work with so many different talents and you work with them so closely, you know who needs what. And the one thing I found, over the years is the ring technicians and the best wrestlers and the best workers were always the ones that needed pretty much every single word scripted for them. And the reason being is they were so good in the ring that that's where their focus was, in the match. But to their credit, they had the confidence and respect of the writer to know, okay, I'm going to concentrate on my match here because I'm a wrestler and that's what I do. You tell me what to say. And then basically now they had the best of both worlds because they had a professional writer writing for them and they were the ones putting together their match in the ring. So they really had the best of both worlds.
The entire show is going to be about the WCW Invasion, so let's kind of jump in the time machine and go back. At the time of the purchase, were you still following the business enough to know who's in charge of creative at WWE, who's going to be making the decisions on how to incorporate the other roster?
I wasn't. I don't know what it is, but there's a thing with me that, like, if I'm not writing it, I can't watch it. I sat down a couple of weeks ago to watch a segment when Eric Young got married, because I love Eric Young and he's a good friend of mine and I'm highly entertained by Eric Young. I don't know what it is. It's hard for me to sit there and watch when I don't have a hand in it. So honestly, no. When my time was up at WCW, I turned it off. I mean, and you know what? I would have liked to seen it, and I would still probably like to go back. I would have loved to seen the last Nitro show when Shane, I guess, let Vince know I just bought this car. I never saw that. I mean, to this day, I have not seen that. And looking back now, it's something I'd really like to see, but it's hard to watch when I'm not writing it.
If you had to guess, and we were going back to 2000, how much involvement would Vince have had with? I mean, this isn't just a storyline on TV. This is a big deal. How deep would his hands have been in the stew?
I would have to think very deep. I mean, that's what I would have to believe, only because. It was probably one of the biggest angles in years. It was an angle that I'm sure cost them a lot of money. At the time, the writers, I think Brian Gerwertz took over when I left, but obviously wasn't as seasoned then as he is now. So I mean, there are a lot of reasons why I would tend to think Vince had a lot to do with it.
Let's talk about the angle and what we saw. Do you think the Shane versus Dad thing was a smart way to go with it?
It's not the way I would have went, but I think it's a way that certainly could have worked. And the reason why I say that is because, Shane was every bit of the performer that his father was. Shane was a great in-ring performer. So no matter what story was written, you had 2 really great performers. So on the surface, that definitely could have and should have worked.
Why didn't Vince, and this is speculation, we'll put the disclaimer up, why didn't he use the big name talent, which he then had available to him, WCW, like Flair, Sting, Scott Steiner, Goldberg, Kevin Nash? Why was there a very big emphasis on, from an Invasion standpoint, on the kind of the B level?
I would have to say, and again, not being close to it, not knowing anything about it, okay, we all know in the last days of WCW, it was known as the ATM machine. And all these guys were making a lot of money, and probably a lot more than they deserved. Okay? I think from a business point of view, Vince was kind of sending out a message saying, I don't care who you are, I don't care what you are getting paid, you're not going to walk in my door and make that kind of money. And I'll be honest with you, from a business point of view, I think he was dead on, okay? The problem was, though, I think he needed a few key members of that group in order to tell his story. I think he needed to really cherry pick for the good of the product and the good of the story. But I think he was more or less, looking at salaries, looking at numbers, knowing that these guys were not worth the money they were getting paid, knowing that he wasn't going to pay them anywhere near that. So he kind of drew a line. And like I said, from a business point of view, I totally understand that.
Mm-hmm. There's about a 2-month gap which happens from the purchase to when these guys are brought onto TV. In a fickle world, it's the 2000, but it was still, we had a lot of distraction, a lot of opportunities for entertainment. Cable's 900 channels still back then. Is that too long to keep people off TV?
Absolutely. The thing with me is and this is going to sound so ridiculous, but every story and every week and every television episode needs to start with logic. What is the next logical step? And I almost laugh saying that, because what is logic in a fake business? Jeff Jarrett used to tell me that all the time, because I used to always hit Jeff with the logic. And he goes, what logic do you want? This is a fake business. I'm like, I understand that, but logically, these characters would act a certain way. Right. That's what I'm talking about. So definitely it logically should have played out that following week. I don't even know what they did during that 2-month gap, but I don't even know how they would have had a week gap.
Well, my assumption is that it was preparatory stuff, but that maybe took that long to incorporate. I don't know. I don't know why they would do it. That's one of those great mysteries.
Yeah, I would have assumed they had plenty of time going in, knowing when this transition was going to take place. I don't think it was a prep thing.
So we finally are exposed to the product after the 2 months, and the first WCW match we see is Buff Bagwell versus Booker T. Should we have started with something else?
That's illogical. You should have taken the angle, and it should have logically played out.
One of the people who does get a focus is DDP, and they involve him in the stalker angle with Taker's wife and some. What about him made him attractive to Vince?
I guessing, because I don't know. I know DDP loved the wrestling business. Loved the wrestling business. Earned his spot. And I also knew there was a part of DDP where his dream was really making it to the big time, which was the WWE. I know how Page was. So I'm sure with that, Vince probably had some bargaining power with DDP, whereas some of the other guys at that level and a little higher were probably all about the money, period.
I see.
And I don't think, I got to tell you something, again, I wasn't involved with these guys in money and contracts and whatnot, but Page never came across as a guy to me that was about the money. Page was always a guy to me that loved what he was doing. So I'm sure Vince probably got Page at a rate they were both comfortable with.
And the character of the demented stalker of Undertaker's wife couldn't be more different than what DDP was doing
Right.
So that's a big leap of faith also to be
Right.
to say, can this guy handle this?
Right. And I don't know. I don't know why they came up with that or why they would have come up with that. And again, if those characters, if that writing staff would have known the WCW characters, that was a reach for Page. See, every character, a successful character, is going to be an extension of himself, because now they don't have to go out there and act. They can go out there and be themselves. They just have to be themselves multiplied by 100. Mm-hmm. And that's not who Page was.
Could the WWE have left the WCW as somewhat intact and run it as a separate entity?
They definitely could have. I mean, they could have done anything they wanted to do. I don't think they would have got the bang for their buck doing it that way, though. I don't think that would have been the way to go.
Not to do like two brands,
Yeah.
kind of thing.
Yeah.
What do you think of Invasion style angles? Anyway, it always becomes the question whether we're talking about Crockett taking UWF, or there's always that debate. Are we going to have a group invasion, or are we just going to slowly sprinkle talent in and create a homogeneous mixture of new talent? Do you have a preference? The Army coming to town?
I don't like the Army coming to town. I like there being a logical story behind it. I mean, I really do. It's when you told me about this assignment, because I never thought of it before, there was such a logical extension to bring WCW over to WWF. So logical, so simple, would have made so much sense, and I mean, it was there on a silver platter. So, I would much prefer telling a story rather than all of a sudden, here's this Army.
Okay. Now, ECW comes along shortly after this. They do another kind of similar thing. Was that an ill fit? Like, you almost see, if WCW is available and for sale, Vince almost has to take it. Mm-hmm. Did they need to do ECW?
Again, I don't, it's hard for me being a writer, because I don't want to take anything away from the writers who wrote it. I really don't. And I don't know what they were faced with or what they were up against. But again, having those tools that were available, I do think there was a logical way to get ECW involved as well. And I do think that was a logical piece of the puzzle.
All right, here we are in Titan Tower, and here's our new property that's just been dumped on our desk in the form of contracts and rosters, and it's called WCW. What are you going to try and convince McMahon to do with this new property and its contents?
I'm going to try to make the story seamless, make the story logical, make the story compelling, and at the end of the day, have it all make sense.
Okay. When we look at these contracts and this roster, is there anybody that you would almost demand that they continue the contractual obligation with, because there's somebody that is going to be in the forefront for the next reasonable amount of time?
The three key players you need right off the bat, no matter what it costs, no matter what headaches are involved, if you want the best television product and you want the best return on your investment, okay, you cannot tell this story without Hall Nash, and Hulk Hogan. Those three, whatever the cost is, whatever the headache is, you can't tell this story and get any benefit whatsoever without these three guys. I would go as far as to say, if you don't have these three guys, don't do the story. Don't do the story. Just forget there's a WCW and just one by one bring in the roster talent as needed. That would be my recommendation.
Who else on here would you, maybe you wouldn't make as impassioned a plea as that, but would you say need to have him on the team? Need to have him on the team? Are there 4 or 5 folks that you knew offhand you would have plans for?
Yeah, I mean, again, looking at this list, it's in pretty good order here. But I would have to say, just looking at this, and again, see, here's how I book. Take my personal opinion out of it. Mm-hmm. How I feel about these guys personally, even how I feel about some of these guys professionally, means nothing, because it's not about me.
Understood.
It's about the audience. Looking at this right off the bat, I would have to say Booker, Goldberg, Flair, and Sting. Aside from the 3 I mentioned, you'd have to have those 4 as part of the angle. And I do believe Booker was the champion at the time.
Do you believe in a true Invasion style? Are we going to be doing something where it's not kayfabe that they bought the other company, that there's a purchase and these guys are coming in now? Or how would you handle that?
Well, see, that's the thing. It's like you don't know if there is a purchase and these guys are coming in. All you know is there was a purchase. Okay, you don't know what these guys' contracts said. You don't know if when there was a purchase, if all the contracts to the WCW talent became null and void. The person at home has no idea what this means. All we know is WCW is out of business, and Shane McMahon, in some way, shape, or form, bought this company, and that's a mistake right there. I mean, that could have worked, but that's not the angle that I would have done.
Gotcha. How do we handle champions? This always when we do Invasion.
It's
type
not
stuff?
important.
Really?
In this story, which should have been based on, people want real. They still want real. What should have been based on real and reality. The titles have absolutely nothing to do with this story. Nothing. The titles make the story fake.
Gotcha. So the WCW list of champions are going to show up on TV. They're not going to be wearing WCW gold.
No.
We're not going to talk about these WCW gold.
No. It's a logical progression with the story. It's not a wrestling angle. Okay, now it turned into a wrestling angle, and that's why it failed, and that's why it was horrible, and that's why it sucked. When you start talking about belts and champions and guys coming in with the titles, this and that, you have now turned a angle that is very real into a wrestling angle. Right there, you lost me now, because now this is all fake.
Okay, so first week of TV, what are we going to look to accomplish?
You're looking to accomplish a seamless bridge from the moment. If it were me, okay, I would have just had WCW closed down. We're going out of business. We're shutting the doors. End of story. The end of an era. Maybe, there was so much, the book, which you love Hawkins so much, who killed WCW, okay, which I'm on the cover of. No, let's really explain on that last show, why is WCW going out for bid? Let's tell the story. Let's say, AOL came in, certain individuals, there was a meeting, they decided that the network wanted to go in a different direction, wrestling was of the 80s, blah, blah, blah. Let's really tell in that last show, this is an end of an era. WCW has been on TBS for 20 years, whatever the case may be, new management coming in. Wrestling is no longer, in their vision. Let's have the same match with Sting and Flair. Let's go out, boom. Let them go out hugging and kissing the whole 9 yards. Vince and WWE are not even involved in the story. Shoot with the story. We're going out of business. This is our last show. Thank you very much for the last 20 years.
So it's almost like a documentary piece, that last show, a news item as opposed to a wrestling show.
Absolutely.
Interesting.
Why shouldn't it be? Why shouldn't it be? Why shouldn't it? Where was it going? It was over. It was done. There are no angles. It's not going to. It's over. And it was history. I mean, what Turner did with WCW, at TBS. I mean, that was history. It was a big part of the history in the wrestling business. It was the end of an era. It did mean something. Let's go off on a high note. Flair and Sting, yes, that was the right thing to do. Yes, but let's be honest. This is our last show. You're not going to be seeing this anymore. End of story.
Pay tribute to the history and then sign off.
Pay tribute to the history. Let's see some clips. Let's see the first match on. How great would that have been?
Yeah, that's interesting.
And then the whole 10 years of Vince Russo killed WCW. Eric Bischoff killed WCW. Hulk Hogan. No, it was a business. This was a decision. This is why there is no longer a WCW. End of story. Move on.
So that program ends, and we changed the channel. A couple of nights later, on comes our first WWE program. Now, there's not going to be any kind of thoroughfare between the two, right? But what is going to come on the screen first for us on WWE TV the night following that tribute show?
What's the bridge, right?
Yeah. Or how do we at least introduce the fact that we're in a new era on the other channel?
We're not in a new era. Same show, same WWF Raw, WWE Raw, whatever it was. Nothing has changed. Okay, WCW went out of business. They're done. We had our tribute show, Monday Night Raw. Whatever the angles were, business as usual. Vince, no mention of WCW whatsoever. Nothing. WWE is going on business as usual.
Okay, so let's start with something then. Let's get one of these WCW guys in here. Who's a guy that maybe we would see on TV first?
Anybody watching this right now, anybody sitting at home, okay, could have booked this angle the correct way, and it would have been absolutely successful. Okay, now, your first step is we need to begin with logic. Okay. That's where we need to begin. WCW is closed. We're assuming the guys, that their contracts were satisfied. If Ric Flair had a 5-year contract, WCW paid him for the 5 years. They're clear and free to work wherever they want. You would have to assume that, since we just told the truth of we don't want to be in the wrestling business anymore. We don't care where these guys go, okay? So, with that being said, you tell me what is the very, very first logical step on that first show?
That there are people showing up who want a job?
How did WCW, what was the first thing, monumental thing that WCW did that went on to bury WWE for 80 weeks or 90 weeks or whatever the heck it was? What was the very first thing that happened?
Well, Lex coming on at the Mall of America.
But not even that. What really was the one significant thing?
Going live?
No.
Same night?
No.
Yes?
Scott Hall.
Scott Hall. Okay.
Scott Hall showing up was the turning point in the next. Okay, what's the logic?
Someone comes out of the crowd on Raw?
Scott Hall, with his tail between his legs, goes to that ring, okay, humbly, I'm sorry, I made a mistake, I don't know what I was thinking, I should have known better, yada, 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 yada. Week 1, Scott Hall wants his job back. Now, why this would have worked beautifully is because Vince McMahon is an absolute egomaniac. God bless him, okay? And now is Vince's opportunity to now have Scott Hall right where he wants him, okay? And let me tell you something. I was there when Scott and Kevin made the jump. And it was a pretty big freaking deal. And it was like taking out your wee-wee and peeing on Vince, okay? And that's how Vince took it. Now Vince has Scott Hall right where he wants him. You want to talk about compelling television. You want to talk about Vince McMahon cutting a promo of a lifetime that would have been so off the charts real, okay? You're talking about Scott Hall standing there, eating it, not saying a word because now he's at Vince's feet. You know, there is nothing he could do. There is nothing he could say. Vince would cut that promo, burying him, burying WCW, the kind of individual you are. Okay, keeping Scott Hall in character. Okay, Vince, you done? Okay, because I'm not. And I'll be back here next week. And I'm not coming alone. Okay, what was the second thing we saw happen at WCW?
Some friends.
Who showed up the next week?
Was it Kevin?
Kevin Nash. There you go. Now Vince has the opportunity to shoot on Kevin.
Same kind of thing. They come out, go into the ring, hold up the show.
Same thing. Now Vince has the opportunity to shoot. But now bro, you got to understand, again, keep it logically, okay? You can't, if this were real and Scott Hall comes through the people, okay? No, you've got to have talent come out, security, the whole 9 yards, and Vince, I got this. And it's what Vince would do. I got this, back off. Okay, let the talent surround the ring. Let the talent go to the ramp. Keep everybody out there, because if Scott Hall or Kevin try to do something, they're dead. Mm-hmm. So like that's not going to happen, and that's why Kevin and Scott don't do anything. But now that second week, here the two of them come, same scene. Here comes Vince down that ramp up with that smile. I've got this. The promo Vince would have cut on Kevin would have been, phenomenal. Okay? Now, you've already trained the viewer to who's coming next. Now, what would the value have been at that point in time? We saw him dress down Scott Hall. We saw him dress down Kevin Nash. The Vince Hogan face-to-face promo, which could have been a huge pay-per-view. Okay, either way, you could have had a huge pay-per-view. You could have done a tremendous number on television. Now you're off to the races. Simple, logical, seamless, makes all the sense in the world. And Nash, Hall, and Kevin would have been worth every single penny that you gave. Mm-hmm.
How do we get Hogan into the fold here? Would it be? It wouldn't be the same kind. Would he be the next one to come out?
Absolutely.
With the other guys.
Just
and
like
now it's the three of them.
You're reversing what happened
Right.
on the other side.
Right.
I mean, you're basically taking that and you're reversing it and you're doing it here.
References to NWO anywhere? T-shirts or no? They're just as them.
I would think they come out as them, okay? Once Vince puts the knife in Hogan, now you see the NWO.
How long is Vince resistant to letting them work on television? I mean, how many weeks are you going to do the I don't care how many people come out, you don't have a job?
No, it ain't gonna work that way.
No.
You
Well,
know?
that's what he's doing, right? Because he's not letting them wrestle yet.
Right. No,
How long do
he's
you-
not. Forget not letting them wrestle. He ain't hiring them.
Right.
Not interested.
Right.
Go start your own promotion. Go tell Hogan. Go do your own reality show. There may be some interest there. Not hiring you. Goodbye. Over. Done with. And at that point, you know, again, the reality is that's where Hogan and Nash can get into, kind of like, you know, Vince, you know, this is all we know. This is all we've done. Humble him. You know, let Scott Hall talk about, you know, who he was before Razor Ramon, and you know, let Kevin Nash talk about I was a bouncer at a bar. I'm not going back there. Let them grovel almost.
Does it weaken them too much?
No, because the more Vince boom, 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 the more they want to seek revenge. The more Vince buries them, the more you know now Vince is crossing the line.
What does Hogan's plea sound like to Vince, given that history?
I think Hogan's plea is, you know, basically putting Vince over for creating him, for, you know, giving me the opportunity. I would have never, you know, be a household name, this, that, and the other thing, blah, 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 if it wasn't for you, blah, 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 blah. Then what I would have had done is let Vince bury him. Yeah, you're right. You would have been nothing without me. You are nothing, this, that, blah, 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 blah. Then let Hulk tell Vince how he really feels once Vince disrespects him that way, and it's almost right there at that point when Hogan shoots on Vince. That is where now you have the birth of the vicious and the out to kill and the bloodthirsty NWO.
I'm a fan in the audience now of WWE's product. Are these guys heels?
Yeah, it doesn't matter. I could care less. Are people watching the show? That's the question. Are people watching the show? I could care less if they're booing them, if they're cheering them. It means absolutely nothing to me. The only thing that means anything to me is what is that number on Tuesday morning, Tuesday afternoon. That's it.
Are the other talent, the other champions there, beginning to address Scott and Kevin and Hogan at all, saying, Vince, let him come in. Oh, you can take it. No.
That's a wrestling angle.
Right.
That's a wrestling angle. They're done. Vince is not hiring them. Thank you for your contributions to the company. Good luck in your future endeavors. That's it.
Okay, how do we get past this impasse where we're having some action?
How you get past this impasse is now they're gone. I think at that point, you don't want to go too long because you don't want to lose the audience, but you would probably have a 2-week period with done.
They're not on TV.
Business as usual. Go on with the show, Rock's the champ, Austin's the champ, whatever the heck is going on, okay? Then now is where you have the situation where there really is no getting around turning it into a wrestling angle at this point, okay? But, again, all of a sudden now, 2 weeks, they're not on the show. Maybe the end of that second week, okay? And I don't even know who is on the WWE roster. This is like Kurt Angle, I'm sure was.
Yeah, Kurt, Rock,
okay?
Austin.
Okay, one of the big ones, okay? End of the show, beaten, bloodied, laid out in the back. Okay?
We don't see who does it or just...
At this point, the audience wants it to be the three of them. The audience is hoping it's the three of them. And you could milk that literally and go after the top dogs. I mean, if it was Austin, Rock, and Kurt at the time, it's the top dogs. Go after them. And now, week by week by week by week, now the fans want it to be the NWO. And now when it turns out that it is these guys, you have not disappointed anybody.
Are you still just that core nucleus of Hulk?
That's all you need.
Okay.
That's it. That's all you need.
So give me a reveal. How can we shoot that we know who it is? We catch them in the act one week?
No, I think probably first week, and again, I'm just...
Well, this is how you did it, though, right? You kind of brainstormed
absolutely.
and...
I would say first week, depending on the pecking order and who was third guy from the top, second guy, and the top guy. I would, say Kurt was probably had the least time in at that time. Kurt's laid out the first week.
Okay.
I didn't see anything. I felt something in the back of my head. I don't know who it was, the yada, yada, yada. Meanwhile, keep in mind, now you've got a whole week of programming because now Kurt's accusing everybody in the locker room. So now you got that whole story going on, okay? Next week, who do you know who was the top two WWE
Who
guys
had the title at the time? Do I have a WWF title? I have the WCW champions. I don't have the WWE champions.
It doesn't matter.
But it would have been Austin, Rock, or Angle, probably, right?
It probably was Rock.
Okay.
So I would say now the second week, Austin. Same thing. I don't know who it was, but I'm going to get the SOB. Same thing, blah, 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 blah. Now when you get to the third week and it's your champion, right? I would have just had kind of like Rock on his back selling, what the hell, blah, blah, blah. Maybe he's bleeding, whatever, blah, blah, blah. Roll over. Spray painted on his back, NWO. Now, you tell me what the rating's going to be that next week.
Big pop.
Huge. And you've done it the right way. You've done it logically. Now you know these guys aren't going to go away. Now Vince is second guessing the promo he cut on the three of them that really set them off. Now I'm tuning in to see what happens.
Okay. Parallel to this, which is no doubt the feature angle on TV and what people are tuning in to see, are there Chris Canyons, Rick Steiners, Shane Douglases popping up indiscriminately, more quietly on TV, working matches on Raw?
The more Vince doesn't acknowledge the talent, the more Vince doesn't want to hire any former or ex-WCW wrestlers, the better the story is going to come in the weeks to come. So I would conduct my WWE product as business as usual.
And literally the only WCW people we're seeing for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks in is that core group that you talked about.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. As we get closer to upcoming pay-per-views, where we want to start to drive those numbers a little bit like we're driving our weekly numbers, how do we do that for a pay-per-view as opposed to the weekly TV? We now know it's the NWO here after 5 weeks. What are we going to start to do to maybe tease the upcoming SummerSlam or wherever? Well, actually, it would have been April, right? April, maybe. So as we're working towards some pay-per-views. So how can we now bridge this to try and drive some buy rates?
How I would probably bridge this to, and again, you got to understand, I'm thinking off the cuff here, okay? They've gone through all this. Rock rolls over, NWO, okay? Following week, Vince is going out there in the middle of the ring. Vince is cutting a promo on all three of those individuals. And Vince is basically saying, I will have you arrested. I will sue you for everything you own. You know, if you interfere with my company, you know, blah, 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 blah. Vince, by himself, Vince cuts this shoot promo on them, okay? At that point, I don't know exactly how I would do it, because I would love to keep it as real as possible. Mm-hmm. But I also think, you know, as I'm sitting here, of those cool black and white grainy videos that they first shot, the NWO promos, that were freaking phenomenal. Maybe while, you know, again, let's suspend disbelief here for a minute, and maybe while that Vince is cutting that promo, maybe all of a sudden on the Titantron there's static, and there's this and there's that and there's the other thing, and here comes the black and white promo. And at that point, I would probably say, if I was them and SummerSlam was right around the corner,
they're not begging for a job anymore, are they, in this promo?
I would say, not only are we not asking for a job, okay? We have no interest in working for you whatsoever. But let us make one thing perfectly clear. We're not going away. We're going to make your life a living hell, okay? And not only will we be at SummerSlam, but at SummerSlam, we are personally going to take out somebody very near and dear to you. And at SummerSlam, they show up, and at SummerSlam, they take out Shane. Now it's personal. So now you've had your big build to the pay-per-view. We're going to be there. We're going to take out somebody near and dear to you. As a matter of fact, the same blood runs through both your veins. You know, something. Right. You know it's Shane. Mm-hmm. And sure enough, they show up at WCW. They show up at SummerSlam, and they deliver.
So when you're writing your SummerSlam show, we're still doing the WWF angles that are on TV. Mm-hmm. The SummerSlam show is a big WWF show, with the exception of there's a threat from NWO. Mm-hmm. Okay. How do you write the scenario with Shane? Is it something like where, because of the threat, we're showing Vince with security and cops around him all the time, and the family's in a separate room, like he's trying to make arrangements to keep everyone safe? You're teasing that throughout the show. How do you do it?
You're definitely teasing that throughout the show, but again, keeping true to everybody's character. Shane McMahon isn't running from anybody. Shane McMahon would literally say, don't freaking threaten me, bring it, okay? And, you know, Vince is talking Shane down throughout the whole show, yada, yada, yada. Wherever there's that little seam, okay, there goes Shane out to the ring. Don't threaten me. If you're going to do something to me, then do it right now. Of course, he's got a pipe, he's got a bat, whatever the heck it is that he's got, okay? Here they come, and it's on. You know, at that point,
where do you send them in from? The ramp or just the audience?
No, the audience, all sides. Right. From there, you definitely physically got to get Vince involved. So they basically kill Shane, but they leave a little message with Vince.
So they do touch Vince?
Absolutely. Okay. Yeah.
A big schmaz, and they escape, there has arrested?
To be. There has to be a big schmaz, because you got to get some of the boys down there. But as much as a shoot look as you possibly can, they need to get out of Dodge as soon as they see everybody coming.
What kind of instruction do you give to Hulk Hogan? And I'm not picking on him, but this has to look real. You know, you're talking about reality. It's got to look like a gang attack, basically. You know, it can't be flamboyant and big. And we talked with Kevin Nash recently, who talked about some of the difficulties of shooting those first NWO promos, because they got what Bischoff wanted. And then Terry talked, and they went, no, it's not 1985. So what instruction can you give Hulk Hogan to hop the guardrail, go in, and look like a Crip or a Blood taking someone out?
I wouldn't have him taking anybody out. I would tell Hulk to go down there and watch and show no emotion on your face whatsoever, because you'd have to be very careful to not get that cheesy fake smile and grin. Hulk, show no emotion.
Okay.
No emotion, and let Scott and Kevin do the damage.
Okay.
That's
Great.
That would be my direction.
Very good. When do we start to incorporate some of the other people?
Why are you so eager to incorporate people?
You know why? Because I got people on a payroll that I'm sending a check to.
But that's my point.
And they're in Florida.
Look how cheaply we're doing this now. We're just using these three. We haven't even scratched the surface yet of anybody else. Why are we in such a hurry to bring?
Because Lex is on the phone every day.
Let him keep calling. We're not ready for him yet. We're not ready for Lex yet.
Okay.
We got 52 weeks here. You want to be out of a job in 3 months?
Our fans.
Exactly,
You
and that's
want them to be
and that's exactly where you want them. What's next?
Okay. Well, this is very good. What is next? We've gotten to SummerSlam. We've got the family attacked. I'm not going to ask who's coming next because I'm going to be patient. I'm going to keep sending those goddamn paychecks out to everybody on the payroll that we got to honor that Time Warner contract. But how do we keep it compelling? Oh, you know what I didn't ask you about? Okay, we've got some on-air talent that might be helpful to us in some capacity. We got Arn Anderson, Larry Zbyszko. The names are going to come up on your screen there. Are these guys we're going to offer jobs to, or do we really not need them?
I don't understand. Why are you so eager to give money away and pay everybody when you explain that to me? We don't need anybody here. Turn this over. We don't need anybody else right now. Your rating is up to an 8.0. You've got everybody and their mother watching the show, sitting at the edge of the seat, and you want to bring in Arn Anderson. No.
I'm in Toys R Us. I got all these
It doesn't matter.
things on the shelf.
You know what? And I'm gonna say what probably is gonna go on my tombstone the day I die. You know what's gonna say on my tombstone the day I die? We have 52 weeks. That's what it's gonna say on my tombstone. We have 52 weeks here.
I'm writing it down so I don't forget as we do this.
Now you've got your next week. Okay? Now, what would Vince do? I can see it in my head. He's in his black sweatpants and his cut-off shirt, and he's ready to go. And you're teasing for the entire 2 hours. He's calling them out. Okay? He started this, and he's going to end it. You know, all three is at the same time. The whole thing. Vince now personally is going to take care of this. Doesn't want any help from any of the talent in the back. Tells Austin, Angle, Rock, you come near that ring, I'll fire you guys on the spot. I'm taking care of this. This is my company. Screw those SOBs. I'm taking care of this. You're milking that through the entire show. Okay, then of course, the limo shows up, and now the shoes come out, and they're walking, and now we got the showdown at the OK Corral. Okay? So now, last segment, Vince calls him out. He's ready to fight. He's ready to fight. He's ready to fight. Who comes out?
They don't come out?
No, hey, we got Arn Anderson and Larry Zbyszko.
Mike Tenay.
Here comes Arn Anderson and Larry Zbyszko and Chris Kanyon. Hey! Vince calling him out, calling him out, calling him out, calling him out. Through the people, who do we see? And Vince stops like a deer in the headlights, the last person he expected to see.
Bischoff.
Bingo. Eric Bischoff in the crowd. He's got that look on his face that only Eric could give you, that smug, I hate your freaking guts, Eric. We're off the air.
Okay.
The following week, now you've built for the first time in history the Eric Bischoff, Vince McMahon showdown. I mean, are you kidding me? I can tell you right now that presented this way would have been the highest rated episode in the history of Monday Night Raw. Hands down, without a shadow of doubt. How do you, and again, I don't want to put any heat on WWE writers because I don't know what they're dealing with at the time. Right. How do you have a moment like this and something like this, and the first time you see Eric Bischoff, you see him in the back, which is what they did. How do you do that? How do you do that? I don't understand it. You set this up this way on Wednesday, on Tuesday after this show. The people already cannot wait to see what happens 6 days from now.
So what happens at the top of the program the following week? Maybe it's not at the top of the program, but next Monday night. We know that they're going to have to meet.
Right.
How do you do that artfully?
I think if you do it all, I think it's real simple. I think Vince goes out there again. I'm not playing head games with you. I'm not wasting time with you. You know, you're a piece of crap. I destroyed you. I did this. I did that. I did everything else. If you're responsible for this, okay, then why don't you come down here, you know, Mr. Karate 9th degree black belt, and see me face to face into the ring. Let's keep Eric true to his character. Here he comes. Mm-hmm. Because Eric would come. Eric's, I don't give a crap. Here comes Eric. I don't have anything to do with this. You think I can control these three freaking lunatics? I could control them when they worked for me. You think I can control them now when I have nothing to do with them? You know? But Vince, I'll tell you that. Obviously, you can't. So if you want your problem to disappear, I can take care of it. Let Eric talk Vince into giving him a job. And he will take care of Vince's problem, and he will guarantee Vince that he will no longer see or have a problem with Scott Hall, Kevin Nash, and Hulk Hogan again. Now Vince gives Eric Bischoff a binding WWE contract.
On air.
Yes, and that could be the next week.
Right. Okay. Is Eric being true to his word, or is he kind of just used NWO to get himself a job?
What do you think?
I think he probably planted the bugs and then rang the bell and said, listen, I can get rid of those bugs.
Right. Now, but no, we don't know that at home.
No, I know. I'm saying that's probably where it's going.
Now, okay, Eric, you got your contract. You have 60 days to exterminate this problem, or this contract's null and void, whatever the case may be, okay? Now, Eric doesn't know anybody in the WWE locker room. Nobody in the WWE locker room likes Eric because of the history. Mm-hmm. Nobody likes him. He obviously can't go there for help. Where can he go for help? Well, now you've got your WCW roster.
Now Zbyszko comes in.
There you go.
Okay.
Now you're looking at the Booker T's, the Goldbergs, the Ric Flairs, the Stings. You've got pop after pop after pop after pop for at least the next 6 months. Mm-hmm. Now he puts his team together to get rid of these guys. Then, again, jumping ahead, mm-hmm. okay? it would obviously have to lead to some kind of a match, where Vince gives these three guys the license to get in the ring. It's got to kind of lead to something like that. They lose, they're gone. They win, they're given contracts. However that gets flushed out, I mean, I would have to really think about that. But it's during that match. And there would, WWE talent would have to be involved in that. Okay, however that's crafted, but that would be the point where there's the Bischoff turn.
We could talk about that. Let me bring you back, and I want to know how Judy Bagwell gets involved in that big main event too.
She will.
But let me go back.
Maybe she'll come out with on.
Now that we are getting some of these guys involved and kind of on Bischoff's team. Are we seeing it in vignettes where he's trying to assemble the team, or are these guys working in the ring now?
It's got to be. This stuff has to be in front of the people.
Okay. So Bischoff is calling them out. And so Bischoff gets an in-ring segment every week where he's like, I'm going to put together the team that's going to solve your problem, Vincent. Okay.
Yeah.
Who are the guys that you'd want to bring in? Who would best suit being around Eric right now?
Man, it's
talkers. What are you looking for? Talkers
it's
or
those guys? It's the Flair, it's the Goldberg, it's Booker, because he was it. Booker would probably be my first guy.
Okay.
Booker would, and again, keep it as real and as shooty as possible. Okay. Not. Hall, Nash, and Hogan weren't the most popular guys in the WCW locker room, okay? Let Booker come out and talk about that. Eric knows that. He already knows that. He already knows how many years Booker was held down because of guys like this. Now's your opportunity. You left the WCW champion, but what does that really mean, Booker? That means nothing. I mean, as a man, did you get any satisfaction? Did you get any vindication? Or did those guys walk away getting the last laugh on you? So, I mean, I would definitely start with Booker at the time because he was the champion. And then, again, I would probably from Booker go to, man, this is really tough. I would probably go from Booker to Flair, only because Flair had been in the WWE already. So everybody would be happy to see Flair, but he had already been there, okay? I would probably, and again, this is, the next two steps are huge with Goldberg and Sting, okay? I would probably do Sting third, which would be freaking huge, and the first time the WWE audience would have ever seen Sting. And again, the history of Sting and Eric never getting along. Now Eric's going to Stingville. There's so much history there that they never used, which was a crying shame. And then last but not least, because he was still, the hottest at the time, and by far the biggest threat, and as a shoot, probably hated these three guys more than anybody else, Goldberg.
Bill,
yeah. And now he's got his team to eliminate these three.
Are we hearing from the NWO as a counterpoint to this on TV every week?
Think
or are we
so.
only now seeing?
I don't think you need to see them at all while you're bringing in the other pieces of the story. And the longer we don't see them, and we don't need them at this point because all this other stuff is huge, the longer we don't see them, the bigger it is the next time we see them.
How do we still keep them as a threat then in people's minds? Do you keep showing the clip of Shane bloodied maybe? How do you keep them?
Well,
how do we know the monster's still in the closet?
You might still have them taking out people week after week. I mean, you still might have them doing their stuff. I mean, I probably would just to keep them alive, but I would keep them totally separate from what Eric's putting together.
Okay.
So I mean, I would have them doing other things. Like I said, to keep them alive, to show the violence, and in the meanwhile, he's putting together his dream team.
So we're poised to have a big six-man? 3 singles? A debate?
At this point, you've got to assume. I'm the Swerve King.
You are?
And I'll go to my grave being the Swerve king other than the boring BS that's out there now. You've got to assume everybody under the WCW moniker is in on this. Okay? Masterminded by Eric Bischoff himself. Because, again, let's keep this as a shoot. Okay? Eric's dream, desire, drive. I just read a recent quote by J.J. Dillon who was saying, you know, like the first time he met Eric Bischoff, he was expecting Eric to really pick his brain because of his knowledge of wrestling, this and that. And all Eric could talk about with J.J. was how Vince was done. It's only a matter of time. So you know Eric was obsessed with beating out Vince. Well, sorry, Eric, WCW went out of business. Now you have nothing, and now Vince won. That's not sitting well with Eric. So you know Eric's master plan is, I'm getting all my guys in here and I'm shoving it up Vince's backside. So I think at that point, you've got to have knowing, you know, everybody is on the same page. We don't know that now, but now I think you've got to have the match where he convinces them, put them in the ring with us. They won't walk out in one piece. I guarantee you that. The whole 9 yards, yada, yada, yada. That's when NW comes back and says, oh, yeah, we'll get in the ring, bud. And how much are you going to make off that buy rate? How much money are you going to make, Vince? What are we getting out of it? So they get something out of it. But I think at that point, NWO needs to go over. Okay, so now they're more threatening than they ever were before. Now in the match, maybe they won some kind of stroke or something, okay? And now maybe that's where some of the other guys step in, like, you know, the Rocks and the Austins. And you know what? Screw you, Eric. You can't get rid of this problem, blah, blah, blah. We'll get rid of it, blah, 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 blah. Now that's maybe where you team. Maybe it's Austin and Rock and Sting and Goldberg, or whatever the case may be, with the stakes of the NW guys getting a contract, getting a job, getting the money they wanted. And that's where you have the two super baby faces, Goldberg and Sting, blah, 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 turn on in Austin and The Rock.
All right, before we get there, though,
right.
You talked about the 6-man and you're going to have NWO go over. Knowing the players like you do, of Booker, Goldberg, and Sting, who would be the guy to say, yeah, I'll take the fall? Who wouldn't be worried about their position?
Definitely. Well, it would make sense for Booker to take the fall, and he wouldn't have a problem taking a fall.
Okay.
I think the first time you see a Bill Goldberg or a Sting in a WWE ring, as a writer, they can't be doing a job. So, I mean, I think the logical one to beat would probably be Booker.
Okay. So now let me bring you back to where you were. You were talking about the two big baby faces. Going to turn?
Yes.
How do you do it?
In the middle of the match. You know, I mean, out of nowhere. And again, if it's Rock and Austin, it's great. You do the turn. That gets those three guys the contracts. Okay? Now, more or less, Vince, who wasn't going to sign anybody, screw them. They're finished. They're done with. Let them go, you know, work conventions every weekend. Now, all of a sudden, you've got Eric, Sting, Goldberg, Flair, Booker, Scott, Kevin, and Hulk, all with WWE contracts.
Very nice.
Now think about this right off the bat.
Okay, go ahead.
Now, you know, like I said, and again, I'm just shooting from the hip here, but if it were, you know, an 8-man and it was Sting and Goldberg and Rock and Austin, okay, and Goldberg screwed Austin and Sting screwed Rock. Oh my God. Goldberg and Austin, you know, Sting and Rock. It goes on and on and on and on.
Here's a good question. How do you, now this is, again, another huge, compelling thing to watch, and it seems that we've built properly. The ratings are probably through the roof now. Aren't you ever scared you're not going to be able to top it next week?
Never. Never.
When Goldberg and Austin runs out of gas, where do you go?
That is really a good question, because here's the thing that makes me laugh, and you know, this is an internet thing, you know, hot shotting. No, there's no such thing as hot shotting, because when I wrote the television, my thing always was, I don't care what we do this week, next week is going to be even better. I had the confidence in myself that next week's show is going to top this week's show. That's how we wrote every single show. There was no hot shotting. And you know, a lot of times what they would call hot shotting, a lot of times we would do something like that would open up the next 12 weeks of programming. That's why you do it. There's no other reason to do it. But you always have the confidence next week is going to be better.
But is there a fear that you had that maybe you're going to give away too much on TV
Never.
for free this week? No.
Never.
Do they do that now? Are the cards too stacked now on television?
The 12-month pay-per-view wrestling model is dead, has been dead for a number of years, has been dead since UFC, you know, took that market away, and an adjustment has not been made. The adjustment needs to be made. The pay-per-view model needs to change. And you know, to continue doing business the way it is now, you're not going to draw any pay-per-view buys. Mm-hmm. You're just not. And you know, that entire model needs to be fixed. It probably needs to go back to when the WWE had the Big Four. I mean, that's probably the best you'll be able to do pay-per-view wise, you know, in my opinion.
Well, let's go back. It was still working here in 2000. I want to see an angle go from creation, a smaller angle, not this. I mean, this is the compelling last 20 minutes, 30 minutes of the show every week. I want you to take two workers that you think would be well matched, and I don't necessarily mean in the ring. We talked about the workers versus, that you think these guys aren't being utilized well, or I could do something with these guys. Let me see that spark and how we could take that through a few weeks.
What are you talking about, the WCW
Middle of the card. Give me a guy from WCW who's going to come over at some point, and maybe somebody in WWF who you thought maybe should have had a little more prominent of a spot. Maybe it's the, I don't know, third or fourth match each week. It's not a big high profile one like the NWO. But two guys that you think you could give compelling television with every week.
Well, I'll tell you what I would do.
Go ahead.
Got so many, you know, a lot of names jump out here. If I were Vince, let's backtrack for a while. Okay. The one guy I would probably give a job to from the get-go, and I would probably hire from this WCW roster, is Lex Luger. And I would say, you started this. You started this. Who do you think you are showing up on their show? I personally would give Lex Luger a job. Then I would go to this roster, and you know, the name that jumps out at me, you know, which, you know, is probably at that time, you know, probably somebody like a Chris Jericho, you know, who was a wise guy, who was always like the thorn in Vince's side the whole 9 years, the whole 9 yards, and let Vince basically say, you know what, you know, you think you're all that, and you've always thought highly of yourself, this and that, and I always looked at you as a mid-carder, blah, blah, blah. You know, show me something. Okay, I'm going to give you the opportunity to embarrass and humiliate Lex Luger, yada, 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 and put somebody like that, you know, against the Lex Luger. Let
me ask you about Lex Luger, since you brought him up. Well, I was a little surprised you mentioned him. So,
But again, the only reason I mentioned them, logic.
Right.
Logic in the storyline. Vince, in Vince's mind, in that character, he would never, ever forget Lex Luger coming out at the Mall of America. Ever. He would never forget that. And if I'm going to make an example out of somebody, it's going to be him. So it's purely like, that's when I tell you, a writer doesn't worry about the match and the hookup. That's not what we worry about. What we worry about is logic first. And Vince would definitely do that.
you know, about this time, we're talking about the WCW roster and everything. About this time, the ECW guys are going to be incorporated, and I know that you've become personal friends with a lot of the ECW guys, and you always admired the work ethic, and so clearly you think that there were guys on the roster that would have been a good fit, if you were there in 2000, that there would have been a good fit for the locker room, or for the product, the kind of product you wanted to do. I don't know if you would have wanted to include them in necessarily the WCW angle, but who there do you think would have been a good fit for your style?
It's funny, you got him at the top of the list. I definitely think Tommy Dreamer. It's funny, Tommy Dreamer would cut promos that would make me cry. And I think Tommy is just very versatile and more than anything else, very, 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 very believable. So definitely Tommy. Again, it's like you got to understand. I always look at the characters, and I mean that's always the most important thing to me. Obviously, Sandman's got a great character. Some of the great ECW guys were already there. Bubba and Devon were already there. Taz was already there. I think Taz was working at the time. I think as far as worker and great talent, I think Rhino. Is really one of the best.
Would you acknowledge ECW? We talked about how you were going to close the WCW show, that tribute show kind of thing with the Flair Sting and all the clips of the history of WCW and NWA, and that chapter's closed. We don't talk about it when we go to WWE. How do you handle an ECW like that? Same kind of thing?
Think about this. You're talking about, you can literally sit here and we could have booked that angle. Just say the timetable was a year. Say it was a year. Say, you know what? Say Vince McMahon said, okay, Vince, I'm going to get all the players you want, but I can only afford to pay them for a year. That's it. We've got these guys for a year. So basically say we sit down and we do this 1 year angle based on everything that I just gave you. Okay, now, again, knowing Vince, okay, at the end of the day, the WWE has to win, okay? When the story is over, WWE has to overcome WCW. Maybe it ends with Vince and Bischoff in the ring. Maybe that's the end of sentence, period. I mean, come on. Well, how did that never happen, correct? How did that not happen?
They held that first night.
Right.
Okay, so to me, that would have been, maybe that's your WrestleMania. Maybe that, you do that for the whole year, whatever. But the point is, Vince wins this thing. Screw you guys, blah, blah, blah. I'm the best. I proved it. The brass balls, the whole 9 yards, blah, blah, blah. You're at the end of that show. Who makes his way through the crowd?
Dreamer?
No.
Or Heyman?
Heyman. You're the best, huh? You won. You've just written a whole other entire year now. Here's the thing. There is not. Everybody says that. I take credit for everything, and I think I'm this, and I think I'm that. There is nothing that I talked about with you today that was genius whatsoever. Okay, it was all, there were 2 things, everything that I laid out were based on logic and staying true to everybody's character. That's it. Those are the two things. It's not, I'm not Larry David. It's really simple. I think part of the problem is right now, and we get off topic for just a minute, but with these layers and layers and layers and layers of creative teams, we've taken something that's so simple and turned it into something that's so difficult. This isn't rocket science. You just have to stay logical, and you have to stay true to everybody's character. But again, when you put the layers and the layers and the layers and the layers on top, that simple formula just gets shot to hell.
Why does Vince McMahon, and I start so many questions with bookers that I've talked to with this, but the reason I say why does Vince McMahon in particular, he's got the pedigree in his family. The business has been in his family for however many years. He grew up in the business. He came up and made it work. So he should know all this stuff. Why does a guy who had a small nucleus of writers, who just sat across the dining room table probably with Cornette and him, or maybe JJ at the time, wherever it was, small group of ideas so that they were all coloring inside the lines together. Why now is it a room full of script writers with no wrestling background, company still headed by Vince McMahon? Why isn't it what you're talking about?
I would just, again, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I'll never forget when I went back there, like in 2002, and I like I said, and I told the story a million times, but I walked into this room full of writers, and my jaw just hit the floor. I couldn't believe what I was seeing, and I'll never forget Vince saying to me, Vince, you have to understand that things are different now. And I remember looking at Vince and me saying, Vince, I understand that, but why would you change something so drastically that was working so well? If you're going to change something for the better, I understand that. But when you're going to change something so drastically, I hate to use this as an example, but I'll use TNA, okay? I was writing, when Jeff exited, I was writing with a young man, 28 years old, 29 years old, Matt Conway, okay? Matt Conway, kind of came up, through the ranks at TNA, was DVD manager, this and that. All I cared about is Matt Conway loved the business. Matt Conway was a lifelong fan. Okay, so now, I took Matt Conway under my wing with the intention of passing the torch. I'm going to teach this kid everything I know because I'm not going to be able to be writing this stuff forever. Okay, but my point is with this 28-year-old kid, okay, him and I, okay. If you go back and look, there was a succession of like 12 out of 14 shows or something like that was a 1.3 and beyond. Okay, there was a stretch where just me and Matt, 1.3, 1.32, 1.35, teetering on 2 million people. Okay, now. So we're doing 1.3, which probably is with the marketing and the advertising and the money they're putting into it, is probably just about the max that TNA can do at this point. Okay? So now we're gonna add Eric Bischoff. We're gonna add Hulk Hogan. We're gonna add Bruce Pritchard. Well, I got news for you. Aside from what those extra salaries cost you, the rating on last week's show was a 0.89.
Right.
So you've got Vince Russo and a 28-year-old kid doing six sessions of 1.3s plus. You bring in all this extra salary. to do a .89. And I'm not picking on TNA, but it's the same story with WWE. I don't know, maybe it's me, but I can't sit here and make any sense of that. It makes absolutely no sense to me. I don't get it. From Vince's point of view, I don't know, maybe that has to do with the becoming a public company. And maybe the board didn't understand wrestling and wanted Hollywood writers. I don't know. Maybe that's what changed that dynamic. I don't know. But my gosh, how difficult is it to go back to what was working?
Well, let me ask you, should WWE stop the movies, stop the Hollywood, stop chasing their dreams? The movies don't make any money. Should they put all their eggs back in the basket of wrestling, or would that be completely deleterious because Wall Street has a say now and, you know, they don't own the company anymore, the public does? Is there a chance for them to put all the eggs back in the basket, the wrestling basket, and push only that product?
Yeah, there definitely is. There's a lot of things that can be done. I'll say it again. I'm not giving them away for free. And maybe, maybe nobody will ever get those things out of me. There are things that can be done, but again, I think what's preventing those things from being done are the layers and the layers and the layers and the layers. I think that has halted the progress.
So the structure has to change before the product will change?
No question about it.
Okay.
No question about it.
Couple of wrap-up questions. As a fan, will I care about characters in the ring ever again?
Again, it depends on the structure. You can.
If it's up to you. Now, this is your world,
yes.
your magic wand.
Yeah. No,
will I care
yes,
again?
There's no question about it, yes.
Will I believe a little bit? That wonderful suspension of half belief, the Chief J. Strongbow feathers. Can I believe again?
Yes.
I believed a little bit with the CM Punk, even though I knew better.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
But you think I can believe again?
I know you can. I know you can.
Can I buy a ticket to a house show that's going to mean something again?
It's so funny. It's when I was there for the Attitude Era and we were doing those crazy, insane numbers. And I went back many years later where, as I said, and I compared it to TNA, it's the same thing. The employees had, quadrupled. And the ratings, were cut in half. I remember sitting there and just really realizing and looking around and just really realizing Vince literally, he's either forgotten what brought him to the dance or doesn't even know or understand what brought him to the dance. The entire wrestling business right now, in my opinion, is absolutely lost. They don't know who they are anymore. They don't know who they are, who our audience is, what our product is, what do people want to watch. It's all over the place. And again, you really need to go right back to the core of, what is professional wrestling? And that's when, if you go back and you look at the Bruno Sammartinos and you look at the Chief J. Strongbows and you go back before them and you look at Curious Georges and you look at, Buddy Rogers and you look at guys like this, that will tell you, who you are. Because right now, every week, it's something different. And what they need to do simply is go back to the core of what the business is. But again, when you've got layers and opinions, you can't get there. You're stepping all over each other. You can't get there. And that's what the problem is.
But you leave us with a shred of hope, which is nice.
Absolutely.
It was good to have hope. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.
Thank you.
And thank
Did we get Arn Anderson and Larry Zbyszko on the show?
It took a little long, but they're going to be there.
Okay.
About 5 weeks.
Great.
Thanks for watching.